I hope you are all doing well. How did you have a wonderful Thanksgiving weekend? Because Melissa and I were just talking before we came on. What a beautiful weekend it was weather-wise. I don't ever remember, well, maybe I probably have had one, but I'll tell you, to have that temperature on a Thanksgiving weekend is pretty unusual. It was pretty nice weekend and gave us an opportunity. We skirted most of the rain and had an opportunity to have a wonderful Thanksgiving outdoors. I got lots of work done at the cottage, which I was planning on doing, rain or shine. So it was nice that it was shining more than it was raining. That hurts as you get older, I don't know whether some of you find this. Of course, you're all very young looking, but as you get older, do you find that, like, if you're outside working in the cold or something like that, or doing some work around the house? Actually, I find it just doing work around the house, rain, shine, hot or cold. I'll tell you, my muscles, I don't know whether they're not used to it anymore or whether they're saying you're at the age where you're not supposed to use me anymore. I'm not sure what it is, but I'll tell you, doing a little raking or a little work around the cottage just gives me some pain in the morning. But and hopefully, I'm hoping that I'm sharing a story that's familiar with everybody who's in my vintage. Um, yes, I know that, Steve. That's fine. We'll probably be a little shorter today, and I'll tell you why. We hadn't advertised having a guest on, and the reason we didn't advertise having a guest on was there was some speculation around the vaccine passport, more particularly the QR code that we wanted to talk about. And well, I'm going to let the cat out of the bag a little bit here. It was actually supposed to be announced at 8:45 this morning. It was supposed to be released. It would have been in our hands by, shortly thereafter. Just to let you know that the QR code is done and ready to go. As we suspected back in early September when Doug Ford announced that it was coming, we kind of knew you don't create something like that with the security principles that you need involved with it, and all of the intricacies to make sure that people's privacy is respected. You don't do that in 30 days. So we knew that that the preparations were well underway, if not completed by that point. And it was just a matter of maybe tidying up things a little bit with respect to it and addressing some of the concerns that we had presented. So we were actually anticipating having an individual who sat in on a release, a private release of the QR code late last week. And again, they were hoping to announce it today, but it's been pushed off. So I suspect, as with a lot of government announcements throughout the last 19 months, we'll probably hear something on Friday, possibly tomorrow, but more likely on Friday, about the QR code. What I can tell you about the QR code, after speaking with this individual that I was speaking to, the province has many of the concerns that businesses had with respects to the QR code, and I think a lot of it was, am I going to need, new equipment? Am I going to need, how difficult is it going to be? I have bad internet in my building or my store or my restaurant. Am I going to be able to function if my internet is a little sketchy? How much trouble is it going to be? All of those kinds of things had been taken into account by the government, and I think those were the tweaks that they were putting on it. Also, the preservation of personal information. So the QR code, as everybody knows, QR codes are pretty simple forms of communication. It's basically a fingerprint of a set of information that you put in. So when you go to the website, when the government announces it, you'll download your QR code based on the information you put in. So your name, your health card number, and it will go to your private information with the Ministry of Health. Your QR code will be there. It will download only the necessary information that is to be displayed. And that is whether or not you've had a double vaccination and what your name is. Because identification obviously is a key component to making sure that this system works effectively. So my understanding is, and what I've been told is there won't be any special requirement for additional equipment that businesses are going to have to purchase or bring in. Businesses or employees of that business will have the opportunity to download the reader or the tool that will enable them to get the accurate information off of the QR code that you present on your phone. So most businesses, I know I've been into a few restaurants where they actually have a screening QR code. You go in, you have to screen. In fact, a lot of restaurants now have their menus on QR code. You hold up your camera, you get your menu, and you order what you want off of that. So, you know, I think it's fairly easy to use from a business's perspective. They'll have to either decide whether they want a dedicated QR code or whether they'll enable their staff to use the reader as well. That will be a determination based on volume and how a business operates. But what happens is when you have the reading application portion of the QR code app on your phone, you will hold it up to, similar to the way you use it now, you will hold it up to the QR code. It will not advertise, so it will only be the user of the phone that the of say the wait staff or possibly the owner of the business will see the accreditation. So it won't pop up on your phone that there's a green check mark or a red X. It'll pop up on that person's phone. So it'll then give a check mark that yes, this person is double vaccinated. And it also is preloaded with all the information that's necessary for various vaccines that are approved by the World Health Organization. So Health Canada and the Ministry of Health have loaded all of that information in. So if someone came and had downloaded the QR code, they had put in their information, their health card information from the country of their origin, it would also populate and accredit that those vaccines as well. So the government is trying to mitigate as much as possible the need for having bilingual or multilingual information. They're trying to make it seamless. They understand that it could be painful for some businesses to go through this. The paper, I'm not totally. I understand why the paper form will still have to be used. I understand why the paper form still needs to be used, but I think what we need to understand is in order to get around the security aspects of things, I think we really need to look at how do we make it digital so that there's not fraud, and because there's going to be fraud. There's already fraud going on, and we all know that. So in order for this to work effectively, especially when they start opening up a little bit more, and I think that's what we're going to see as things progress, Large stadiums now are going to have 100% capacity. The next step is to start opening up capacity in restaurants and other retail operations to more capacity as well. I really think if this works, if we can get this under control and operating effectively from a business perspective, I can see things opening up more rapidly than we ever anticipated. The vaccine rates are for new or first doses are going through the roof. We can see that now. People don't want to be left behind or want the opportunity to do the things that they like to do. So they're starting to make that decision to go out and get vaccinated, and that's really the key to the whole thing. So I think the province of Ontario will do its darndest to make sure they've listened. They have concurred with the Ontario Chamber of Commerce that there were anomalies that they needed to address, and I think based on the information that we have at this point, we're quite excited to have the digital version of the vaccine verification rolled out because we think it'll make it a lot easier for businesses. So that said, there's still a complex issue around vaccine certification. And I think with the Prime Minister coming out last week, I believe it was, and talking about an international version of vaccine passport, which could be then bridged over to include all provinces and all countries around the world, is something that's a big task, but I really think that that's the way we're going to have to go. We now have airlines in Canada. I think it's starting in November or somewhere around the end of November. You got to have vaccine certification to get on any flight anywhere in Canada. So that's one step in a direction that really says the world needs to come together on vaccine certifications, and we need to try and have a blended system, because you start thinking about, I was saying to staff earlier, you start thinking about if you travel across Canada and you're going to need vaccine certification in every province who has their own, and then you're going to travel to the US and you maybe need some sort of vaccine certification for boarding the plane, or you're going to Europe and you need something else. It just doesn't make sense that we don't work on a global solution to this. And I think, quite frankly, while it's a big task to get everybody on side with what that looks like and how it operates, I think, once that is decided, it would be pretty easy to mobilize and institute immediately. So I think by the first of the year, we're going to see movement in the direction of universal vaccine passports that are going to allow you to enter a restaurant here in Cambridge, enter a restaurant in Vancouver, British Columbia, get on an airplane, go to the US, go to Europe, wherever. You'll have something that'll be, while it may not be the exact same around the world, it'll be recognized around the world. And I think that's where the next step is. Somebody said the other day there are 4 billion doses of the vaccine have been administered at this point around the world. So that really, when you consider that for the most part it takes 2 doses to give someone fully vaxxed, that's 2 billion people out of 8 billion people that are fully vaxxed, and so that really represents about 25% of the global population. And I was telling someone earlier this week or late last week that we need to understand clearly where we are in this pandemic. We're really, on a global basis, we're 25% of the way there. We really can't have global defeat of the virus until we capture herd immunity around the world. Because just think of our world. It's, people travel like crazy. Europe, Asia, South America, all through North America. People, look how quickly the virus mobilized itself in people and moved around the world. It moved basically at light speed. And really, when we look at where we are in the pandemic right now, with roughly 25% of the world's population fully vaccinated, we got a ways to go, because people are needing to travel for business or otherwise, and we can't risk being unprepared by just saying in North America, oh, we seem to be okay, or in Canada we seem to be okay, or even in Europe we seem to be okay. We've got to recognize that much of the world, some parts of the world, haven't seen one dose of the vaccine yet. And we need to make sure that happens, and happens as quickly as we can. So I remember when the vaccines first came out, and you listen to some of these doctors, and they, I don't think they intentionally scare you, but this one doctor said, well, it'll take 5 years to get the vaccine circulated throughout the world. And, you kind of think, wow, no, they'll ramp up production. We'll be able to do it a lot quicker than that. But when you think about it, I know we've only been at this for, 9 or 10 months with the vaccine actively rolled out, or I guess just about 11 months. But we've got a lot of the world you think about that. It took 11 months to get 25% of the world double vaccinated. We got a little ways to go. And maybe that doctor right in the very beginning that said it's going to take 5 years wasn't too far off the mark. So, we have to understand that these kinds of things, these protocols, these verifications are really important to curbing the spread where vaccine penetration has been the highest. We want to make sure that we keep our numbers low, so that we don't see that big bloom again of infection rates that cause us to shut down. We want to open more. And some of the ways of opening more, unfortunately, are saying people have a choice, and you make that choice, you're going to not get the vaccine. Then, there are going to be certain places and certain things you're not going to be able to do, simply because we're trying to make sure that we don't have a resurgent again. Let me, I was just going through some documentation from the very beginning back into March 2020. And, this was very interesting. On March 17th, 2020, Doug Ford came out and declared a state of emergency in the province of Ontario and shut all non-essential businesses down. He said until March 31st, but we all know now that he was pretty optimistic at shutting it down for, about 12 or 13 days. However, what the important stat behind that is, on that day, March the 17th, 2020, Ontario had 8 new cases of coronavirus, for a total at that point of 180 active cases in the province of Ontario. March 17th, 2020, we had 8 new cases that day for a total of 180 cases. And Doug Ford stood at the podium and shut all non-essential businesses down. Right now, I don't know about you, but I look at it and see yesterday was, 10, I think the last 2 days were about 10 cases each in the region of Waterloo. And I thought, wow, we're getting there. We just about got this thing beat in our area. But then you think back to March 17th, 2020, and the entire province was shut down because of 8 new cases. and 180 cases in total. So, I think what has happened is that the science at the very beginning, and this is maybe a good message for those who kind of are skeptical on the science. The science in the very beginning was absolutely bang on. They said, Mr. Premier, you've got to do this. Otherwise, we're going to have a catastrophe on our hands. And as we know, things didn't open back up on March 31st. They didn't open up on April 30th. They didn't open up on May 31st. It was quite a while before things started to open up, because in spite of the fact that non-essential businesses were closed, essential businesses carried on, which they have to carry on, and workplaces became the transmission point. That said, we didn't have vaccines. We didn't even know whether a solution was even in the works. Fortunately, it was, and we are where we are today because of that. But can you imagine if we still didn't have a vaccine, where we might be, especially with the Delta variant that transmits much quicker? I think I've maybe mentioned this on Chamber Chat before, but a virologist told me that if you have a high-powered microscope and look inside the nose of an infected person with the Delta variant, the viral load is 1,000 times greater than it was with the original coronavirus. So doesn't necessarily mean you get 1,000 times sicker. You do get sicker because there's a heavier viral load. What it really means from a virologist perspective is, if there's 1,000 more chances or 1,000 times the chance that person can pass on the Delta variant than could pass on the original coronavirus. And that's really what it tells the virologists that are working on this day in and day out, I'm sure. So vaccine passports, while they are, I think we've seen in many cases, they are something that none of us want. And I'm quite convinced that governments are of the same mind. We all know that Doug Ford didn't want to have vaccine certification going forward. He didn't want to segregate society. But, the unfortunate thing is it's really the only path to ensure that businesses can continue to stay open. And the good news on that front is businesses are continuing to stay open. So for all of you who are having desperate problems at hiring staff, the good news is we are actually back to pre-pandemic unemployment rates, 6.3%. So think about that. We're back to pre-pandemic unemployment rates. So a whole ton of people have taken themselves out of the workforce, whether it's because of retirements or because they just decided they no longer want to work. We're not sure. We're in exactly the same state that we were in, let's say, in January of 2020, when we all had difficulty, even at that point, at hiring staff. There was a shortage in the workforce. So now it's compounded even more. And I can tell you that I've had a couple of conversations, and I know this isn't universal right across the platform of business in the hospitality field, but I've talked to a couple of restaurants who actually have said, in spite of the fact that they're at 50% capacity, that their revenue, their weekly revenue, is back to pre-pandemic levels. So their actual sales, cash sales, are back to pre-pandemic levels. Part of the problem is their wages have gone up, everything's gone up. Their food costs for buying wholesale have gone way up. So their profit margin certainly isn't there at this point, but their revenue lines are. And again, I'm not saying that that's you can broad brush paint every single restaurant in town with that. But things are coming back. And the reason they're coming back is because we're at 6.3% unemployment. And, you know, economists will tell you at 5% unemployment, we virtually have full employment. And so, you know, I think we've got the biggest pandemic problem that we have right now, and we've seen it as businesses have started to open up, are trying to find people to fill the vacancies that are out there, and there are thousands of them. I had an individual say to me last week, if you don't have a job, you're not looking for one. And that's exactly what it is. If you don't have a job, you simply are not looking for one, because I don't think you can drive down a block in Cambridge or any other municipality that has businesses on it where you don't find help wanted or hiring now. I think it's actually unbelievable at this point. So vaccine passports are going to be important. Vaccine verification is going to be really, really important. But what we're trying to work on the government now is to keeping a priority at workforce development. We've got to figure this out, whether it's through immigration, whether it's through, you know, I think, you know, there's still to touch on the original concern, which was CERB. I think there's still some merit in dealing with those benefits that are going out to individuals. But I can tell you, it doesn't appear that is the big nut of the problem at finding staff these days. That is one of the aspects for sure, but it's not the big nut. The big nut is the economy is actually growing while we've been in a pandemic. So you think of it this way, there are more people on the earth today than there were yesterday. There are more people buying cars today than there were yesterday. There's more people driving cars today than there was yesterday. So you think of Brian from my office and I were talking about it just yesterday. And if you think about it, you know, after 19 months of this, if every single day there are more people living on the earth and buying things and consuming things and doing things and getting older as there was the day before, after 19 months, we've got a huge capacity issue. We've got the same number of people doing the work and more people wanting the products or services or entertainment value. And I think that therein lies the problem, a lot of the problem. And we've got to start figuring out how we're going to deal with that, because it's getting to a dangerous state. In fact, I said to Brian yesterday, how are we to grow the economy if we can't grow the people that are working in the economy? You simply can't grow an economy. You can't ask someone to manufacture more widgets when they haven't got any people to be able to work the machines to make more widgets. And if the world is looking for more widgets, we need to have more people in order to build those widgets. So I think immigration is you know, certainly one of the catalysts that we need to work on, but we also need to work on our education system as well. We need to identify those individuals who are not going on to post-secondary school and making sure that they get channeled into the jobs that they're going to survive in and that they're going to enjoy. But also, we need to start channeling people or helping people to get channeled into the services we need. The skilled trades are really, really, really important. We're building more and more homes every single day. We need more and more plumbers and electricians and builders and concrete folks, and we need all of them. We absolutely have to work hard on this. This is going to be the most important tool to getting our economy back on track. But we certainly see light at the end of the tunnel. I am predicting, and I'm going to let you folks, well, you can have some commentary if anybody wants to talk about something, but I'm going to tell you that I suspect that the QR code will be launched late this week, probably tomorrow or Friday. It is ready to go from the province's perspective. I think that while there are always going to be little bugs with the a new program coming out, I think they're making sure that they've addressed as many of the issues from small and medium-sized business as they possibly can, so that it's convenient and it veers away from any of the problems that we've seen. And they haven't been huge or large in numbers, but we want to make sure we mitigate them as much as we possibly can. Most of the people that are going out anyway are, the vast majority of people are fully vaxxed and shouldn't have an issue with that. So expect that to come sooner rather than later. And we'll keep you posted on some of the things that we need to work on with respects to refining it and making it even easier for business, and then integrating it across a platform that gives us broader access in other provinces and other countries. So sorry, my guest didn't show up and you had to endure me, but that's the way it goes. Anybody have any comments or questions or worries about it? Yeah, it's interesting that the U.S. just announced land border crossings for Canadians. It'll happen in early November. I think that's going to be a good sign too. That's always a good sign. I couldn't figure out why we weren't pushing more when we made it possible for Americans to come here a long time ago, and they have a lot less lot lower vaccination rate than we do. But now we'll be able to cross the border. And the other good thing, I think, for some individuals who rushed out and got their AstraZeneca double dose before long, I think you're going to see, well, it's already been, the Americans have already said they're going to accept any vaccines that have been approved by the World Health Organization. The last step to that is people who have been double dosed, but maybe two different vaccines, whether you got AstraZeneca and then an mRNA, or whether you had a Moderna and a Pfizer. That's the last step, but everybody else has approved that. It's just the Americans, oddly enough, are I can't understand their reluctancy to do anything, quite frankly, but in any event, they're going to come on board with that, I'm sure, sooner rather than later as well. So for those of you who are planning a vacation to the south, even if you've got two different vaccines, you're probably going to be okay to do that. Just keep posted to the news media, because they are going to announce as well the booster for individuals, and I think that'll come in very short order. The CDC, they're just waiting for final information on the CDC, but the World Health Organization has recommended 65 and older, and those with pre-existing conditions should be getting the booster after 6 months after their second dose. So that'll put many on this call due for a booster probably sometime around December or January. So keep your ears and eyes focused on that information coming forward as well, because that'll be ramped up very, very quickly. Will you have to use a QR code, or will the current receipt, Mike, is still going to be acceptable? Yeah, I don't think they've done anything about that at this point, but they're probably going to try and collect some data and see what percentage of people are using the QR code and what percentage of people are using the paper, which is a lot easier to forge or fraud, which is a little bit of their concern as well. But Yeah, I actually have the paper on me, and I actually have a PDF of it on my phone. So whichever is easier for me to grab at the time. So but I'm looking forward to the QR code because I think that'll make it a lot easier for me anyway. Um, and it won't, by the way, when you use a QR code, it stores nothing on the other person's phone, gives them a 3-second view of what the answer is to their question, which is this person, what is this person's name and are they fully vaxxed? And then it disappears off the phone and no data is recorded. So that's it, folks. If you have any other questions, again, I apologize for not having my guest this week. We'll see what happens the rest of this week. I'd love to have her on. She was very engaging when I spoke to her about the preview that she saw. She just didn't feel comfortable coming on without the government actually officially announcing it. She will certainly get her on when she's vice president at the Ontario Chamber of Commerce. We'll certainly get her on and talk about some of the problems with the QR code that they've identified and some of the things that the government did to mitigate some of the concerns of small businesses as well. And we'll have more on everything else next week too. We'll have a little bit of everything. So stay tuned. Watch for your email coming out about Chamber Chat and who we'll have on. Thanks very much, folks. Have a great Wednesday.